Welcome back to the deep dive. We're diving into a topic that's been making headlines and sparking a ton of speculation, mystery, drones, and orbs.
Oh, yeah, this is a good one.
It seems like everyone's talking about it, and we're going to try to sort through all the noise and figure out what we actually know so far.
Yeah, definitely lots of theories flying around.
Exactly. We've got a whole bunch of reports, official statements, even some theories that might sound a little out there. But first, let's go back to the beginning. It all started back in November 2024.
All right, November 2024.
So picture this. You're in New Jersey, it's nighttime, and all of a sudden you see these unidentified objects in the sky.
Like, what do we even call these things?
Well, people are calling them drones, but they're described as being really large and totally silent. Some people say they were like the size of an SUV.
Whoa, that's huge.
Yeah. And then others said they were smaller, more like the size of a bicycle. So you've got this mix of sizes, but all these things are just silently gliding through the air.
I can see why people would be freaked out.
Oh, absolutely. And what makes it even more interesting is where these sightings were happening. We started seeing reports near places like Trump National Golf Club.
Oh, wow, so a pretty high-profile location.
Exactly. And then you've got the Picatinny Arsenal.
Okay, that's a big one.
Yeah, it's a major hub for military research, weapons development, all that. So you don't just have your average run-of-the-mill drone flying around these spots.
Definitely not.
Makes you wonder what's going on, right?
For sure.
And the authorities definitely took notice. The FAA even issued temporary flight restrictions over both those locations.
The FAA stepping in, that's a sign they're taking it seriously.
Yeah, they don't do that lightly. But it wasn't just them. You had the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, even the Department of Defense all getting involved as these reports kept coming in.
Whoa, so like every agency got involved in this.
It was a whole team effort.
Yeah.
But before we go too far, maybe we should clarify what each of those agencies actually does in a situation like this.
Yeah, good point. People throw those acronyms around, and it can get confusing.
So first, you've got the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They're the ones who usually take the lead when you've got potential criminal activity.
Makes sense. They're the investigators.
Right. So they'd be looking into who's behind these drones, what they're up to, that sort of thing. Then you've got DHS, the Department of Homeland Security. Their focus is pretty clear from their name. They're all about keeping the country safe.
So looking for any threats, basically.
Exactly. And then you've got the Department of Defense. They come in if there's any suspicion that another country's military might be involved.
Okay, so that's the big guns coming in if things get serious.
Exactly. So you've got all these agencies working together. But while they were doing their thing, the public wasn't exactly staying quiet. Social media just blew up with all these theories.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, unexplained objects in the sky, it's like something out of a movie.
It is. People were sharing videos, photos, all kinds of stories. The FBI actually got over 5,000 tips from the public.
5,000. That's a lot of people looking up and wondering what's going on.
Yeah, it shows you just how much this whole thing captured people's imagination. But here's where it gets even wilder. As we moved into December 2024, the sightings weren't just limited to New Jersey anymore.
Oh, so it was spreading.
It started spreading, yeah. You had reports coming in from New York, Connecticut, Maryland, even all the way out in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just those large drone-like objects either. People started describing these mysterious orbs.
What do you mean by orbs? Like balls of light?
Yeah. Some people were saying they saw these glowing orbs, completely silent, just hovering or moving around in weird ways. Some even said they would just disappear and reappear.
Now that's starting to sound really strange.
Oh, it gets even stranger. Some of these orbs were described as having red and green lights, like your typical drone. But then others described them as being totally silent and just hovering there. It's almost like there were multiple things going on, you know?
Yeah, different descriptions, different behaviors. It makes you wonder if it's all connected or if there are multiple things happening at once.
That's what's so intriguing about this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what really caught people's attention was how these orbs were moving. Some people reported them making these crazy maneuvers like sudden accelerations, sharp turns, even hovering in place for a really long time.
Now that's what gets me. Drones, even the really advanced ones, they can't do things like that.
Right. They have limits in terms of how fast they can go, how much they can turn, how long they can stay up in the air. These orbs were defying all of that. So we've got strange objects, diverse locations, bizarre flight patterns, and a public that's both fascinated and a little bit scared, I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, no kidding. So what did the authorities have to say about all this? They must have been under a lot of pressure to explain what was happening.
They were, but despite all the public concern and these increasingly strange reports, their message stayed pretty consistent.
What were they saying?
Basically, no threat to national security.
No threat to national security. Huh. I guess that's supposed to be reassuring, but
Yeah, but I don't think it really calmed everyone down, especially when you had local officials coming out and saying that the government was hiding something.
the classic cover-up theory.
Right. That always adds an extra layer of intrigue to any mystery, right? And it definitely played into this whole situation. You had folks who were absolutely convinced the government knew way more than they were letting on, and they weren't shy about saying so. But then you also had people who were more willing to trust the official story.
It's always interesting to see how people react to these kinds of situations. You've got the skeptics, the believers, and everyone in between. And then, of course, you can't forget about the media. They love a good mystery, and this one had all the right ingredients. Headlines were screaming about secret government projects, alien invasions, all sorts of stuff.
It was a media frenzy for sure.
Yeah.
But before we get too carried away with the speculation, I think it's good to take a step back and look at what we've established so far. We've got these initial sightings in New Jersey, then it spreads to other states. You've got these orbs that are doing things that seem impossible. And then you have this tension between what the government is saying and what the public wants to know.
A lot to unpack here, for sure.
Yeah.
And a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah, like why are these things here? What are they doing? Who's behind them? Are they a threat?
Big questions.
Big questions indeed. And those are the questions we're going to start tackling in the next part of our deep dive. We're going to explore some of the most popular theories and speculations surrounding these drone and orb sightings. We'll look at the evidence, weigh the possibilities, and try to make some sense of it all.
I'm ready to dive into those theories.
Me too. But before we do that, we want to hear from you. Have you seen anything strange in the sky? What are your thoughts on what's going on? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss part 2 of our deep dive into mystery drones and orbs. We'll be back after the break.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we laid out the timeline of these drone and orb sightings. Now let's dig into some of the explanations that people have been throwing around.
Okay, yeah, let's get into the theories.
Yeah.
I know some people have some pretty wild ideas. Where should we start?
Well, how about with something that's at least somewhat grounded in reality? Let's talk about advanced drone technology. It's possible that we're seeing technology that's way ahead of what's publicly known.
So you're saying like super advanced drones that are stealthy, super agile, maybe even mistaken for something extraterrestrial.
Exactly. Think about it. Governments and private companies are pouring tons of money into drone development. They're constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible. So imagine drones with cutting-edge propulsion systems, maybe coated in some kind of radar-absorbing material and capable of flying themselves for hours on end. At night, especially, it wouldn't be hard to mistake one of these things for something much more exotic.
That makes sense for some of the drone sightings, maybe. But those orbs, can drones really explain those crazy movements, the sudden appearances and disappearances, those incredible speeds?
Yeah, that's where things get a little more complicated. While some drones are designed to be spherical, those orbs people are describing are doing things that most drones just can't do.
Right. It's beyond what we normally think of as drone capability.
Exactly. So we have to consider some other possibilities. One idea that's been floating around is that these crafts could be from foreign adversaries, using them for espionage.
So basically spy drones sent by rival nations to gather intelligence, especially given the sightings near those sensitive areas, like military installations. That would make sense.
It's a legitimate concern. The problem is officials have said that there's no evidence pointing to foreign involvement. And you have to think about the logistics. Launching and operating super sophisticated drones over U.S. territory without getting detected, that would be incredibly complex and pretty risky.
So not impossible, but definitely a logistical challenge.
Hmm.
Okay, what about some of the less conventional explanations? The ones that get into, well, let's say science fiction territory.
You mean things like dot plasmoid phenomena?
Exactly. And I guess we have to at least mention it. Dot aliens.
Let's break those down, starting with plasmoids. Basically, these are naturally occurring balls of plasma, which is just ionized gas. They can form in the atmosphere, and they can do some pretty strange things.
Like what?
They can glow, they can move in unpredictable ways, even exhibit some behaviors that might seem, well, unnatural.
Okay, so could that explain some of those glowing orbs that people have been reporting?
Possibly. We don't know a ton about plasmoids, and their behavior can be really unpredictable. It's not out of the question that they could be mistaken for orbs, especially in areas where there's unusual electromagnetic activity.
Now, what about aliens? I know it's a popular theory, but
The extraterrestrial hypothesis is always fascinating. but it's the kind of claim that needs some really solid evidence to back it up. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, as they say.
Right, exactly. But let's play devil's advocate for a minute. What if some of these sightings, the ones that just don't make sense with any other explanation, what if they really are evidence of non-human technology?
It's a thought-provoking idea, for sure, if we assume just for a moment that life exists beyond Earth and that some of those life forms might have technology far beyond anything we can imagine, then yeah, it's not entirely crazy to think that some of these unexplained things in the sky could be theirs.
Okay, now my mind is officially blown. Advanced drones, foreign spies, plasmoids, aliens.
Mm.
It's a lot to take in.
It really shows how much we still don't know about the universe and how much we have left to learn. But even with all this uncertainty, there are some key takeaways we can focus on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
What are some of the most important things we should keep in mind as we try to make sense of all this?
Well, for one thing, we need to be really careful about where we're getting our information. It's important to evaluate sources carefully, look for credible evidence, and avoid jumping to conclusions based on headlines or stories that haven't been verified.
Hmm.
Basically, don't believe everything you read online.
Good advice.
And another crucial point is that we need to encourage continued investigation. This means both official investigations by government agencies and independent research by scientists and other experts. We need to analyze the data we have, look for patterns, compare these sightings to other unexplained phenomena throughout history, and see if we can start to connect the dots.
So basically, stay curious, stay informed, but don't jump to conclusions.
Exactly. Oh, and one more thing. Keep an open mind. We might not have all the answers right now, and the truth might be something we haven't even considered yet.
I like that the truth might be stranger than we can imagine. It's both exciting and a little unsettling, isn't it?
It is. It challenges us to think differently about reality, about our place in the cosmos, about what's actually possible.
It definitely makes you look at the night sky a little differently.
So speaking of perspective, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how the government and the public have been reacting to all this. We've touched on it a bit already, but I think it's worth diving into a little deeper.
You're right, it's a fascinating aspect of this whole phenomenon. You've got the government trying to walk this fine line between maintaining order, investigating these incidents, and not causing widespread panic. And then you have the public who are understandably curious, concerned, and some of them, yeah, maybe even a little scared.
And then you throw the media into the mix, and it becomes even more complicated. Exactly. The media plays a huge role in shaping public perception, and they don't always get it right. Sometimes they focus on the most sensational aspects of a story, even if those aspects aren't necessarily the most important or accurate.
So how do we navigate all of this? How do we sift through the noise and figure out what's really going on? I guess that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is, and it's a question we're going to keep exploring as we continue our deep dive. But first, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more about the government and public response, and we'll explore some tips on what you can do if you happen to see something strange in the sky. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? From those first reports in New Jersey to theories about advanced tech, even aliens. It's been a wild ride.
Yeah, it really has. And it's a topic that's got people thinking, wondering what it all means.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it makes you question what you thought you knew about the world. So let's talk about how people have been reacting to all this. We've got the government on one side trying to figure things out and keep everyone calm. And then you've got the public on the other side, and they're understandably looking for answers.
Right. It's a tricky situation.
It is. So what's been the government's response so far?
Well, it's been a mix of caution, I'd say, and maybe a little bit of, not giving everything away. They've said they're looking into the sightings, but they've also been really careful not to cause a panic. Their main message has been no threat to national security, but I don't think that's convinced everyone.
Yeah, especially when you have those local officials saying they think the government is hiding something.
Right. It's like they're not being totally transparent.
Exactly. And that just creates more uncertainty and distrust.
It's classic, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
When people feel like they're not getting the full story, they start filling in the blanks themselves. And that's where those conspiracy theories come from.
And then the media jumps on that and it just snowballs.
Yeah, the media definitely plays a role in all of this. Those headlines can be pretty dramatic sometimes.
They know how to grab attention, that's for sure. But okay, let's switch gears for a second. Let's say someone listening right now, one of our listeners, sees something strange in the sky. What should they do? Should they Like, run and hide, start filming, or just ignore it.
Well, first of all, safety first. Don't put yourself in danger trying to get a better look at something. But if you can safely observe it, try to get as much information as you can. What does it look like? How big is it? What color is it? Is there anything unique about it? And pay attention to how it's moving.
Yeah, like, is it just hovering or is it zipping around?
Exactly. And if you can safely take pictures or videos, that's even better. But again, don't risk your safety.
So observe, document if you can, but stay safe.
Right. And think about reporting what you saw to the authorities or an organization that collects that kind of information.
Like who?
Your local police, the FAA, or even groups like the National UFO Reporting Center. They keep track of these kinds of sightings, and they can help figure out if there are any patterns or explanations.
So report it, but don't freak out, basically.
Pretty much. But, I think there's a part of all of us that kind of hopes these things are real, that there's something extraordinary.
Yeah, like maybe we're not alone in the universe. It's kind of exciting to think about.
I agree. It speaks to that sense of wonder that we all have, that curiosity about what's out there beyond what we know, and the possibility that we might not be alone. That's pretty amazing to consider.
It really is. So as we wrap up our deep dive into these mystery drones and orbs, I think the message is clear. Stay curious, keep looking up, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Who knows, maybe one of our listeners will be the one to finally crack the code on all of this.
The truth is out there somewhere. We just have to find it.
And that's a wrap on this episode of The Deep Dive. We hope you enjoyed exploring this fascinating topic with us. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into all sorts of mysteries. And until next time, keep searching for those answers.